Welcome to TechieCastJax, where the top technology and business experts around discuss the latest trends in high tech. This podcast is hosted by Joe Holbrook, who's an experienced technologist pundit in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hello and welcome to TechieCastJax. Joe Holbrook here. Really excited to be talking about blockchain salaries. Now, when it comes to blockchain salaries, demand, and skills, it's definitely a potpourri of different experiences. There's no question. Blockchain is one of those areas that, again, is evolving, and in reality, a lot of the requirements and expectations are vastly different. It's not like getting a cloud roll. It's just a different animal. Now, blockchain, we know, for example, is a distributed network. It's really different than having a single database, having a centralized database to deal with. It is meant to have a network of computers that effectively will have a secure chain with a ledger. This is really meant to mitigate possible hacks and, escalate security, but also to provide transparency if that's what the company would like. But in reality, the goal of blockchain is to make sure that record or those records that are being written to the blockchain are effectively immutable. In other words, they can't be deleted, they can't be modified. This is really, again, where a lot of the world is going. Now, one of the discussions that I'll have separately will be mainly around blockchains, around central banking. This is a big deal. This is all over the news lately. Everything from Ripple to Hyperledger to Quorum, a lot of discussions. Now, most of the discussions for blockchains, to the folks that are not into deep IT or enterprise IT, would think of Bitcoin or even Ethereum. Now, it is important when it comes to salaries to understand that this is still an evolving area. Now, blockchain developers are generally going to be the highest paid. Now, if you go over to, for example, I think it was LinkedIn, and if you go over to, let me look up the site again here, Upwork. So Upwork, for example, had an interesting survey and skill list that they put out, and it was called the Q1 2018 Skills Index. And it ranked blockchain as number one. And then, as we might be aware, LinkedIn then came out, I think, in early 2019 and said, oh, blockchain's the number one skill as well. And that's a hard skill. So blockchain is definitely picking up. Companies are really looking for this skill, and they're willing to pay for the right skills. Now, the million-dollar question is how do I get into blockchain? Well, to be honest, it's pretty much by accident in a lot of cases. It's not something that you can really study for. There's boot camps, there's courses, I teach some, but the fact is, if you're going to go into blockchain, you really have to be a developer. Now, there's a few roles that are blockchain architects and engineers, but in reality, you're not going to be a very good blockchain engineer or architect if you don't know anything about Python or Golang or JavaScript or any number of languages that these blockchains use. It's just going to make your life pretty hard, and you won't be very helpful to your customers. But the reality is that blockchain developers are going to make an average of $150,000 to $175,000 in the U.S. Now, the growth is expected, depending on the surveys that you look at, anywhere between 2,000 and 6,000, basically year over growth. So it's YOY growth, basically. Now, these salaries are considered pretty much the highest in the industry for developers. Now, if you go take a look at, for example, different sites, you go look at Hired or you go look at LinkedIn. A typical blockchain engineer salary could range in San Francisco around $162,000, in DC $131,000. For those folks in Canada, Toronto is a really hot area right now for blockchain. Another area that seems to be picking up in demand is Seattle. Now, when it comes to getting into blockchain, we know the salaries. Again, the salary range is going to be, right in that ballpark generally, but a lot of it depends on where you're at, right? So you may make anywhere from 150 to 175. That's as a developer. Now, if you're an engineer, that is going to be a little bit lower. That could be, somewhere around, it looks like the average is about 137,000. But there isn't really any good all-in-one surveys done. So you have to go to like 8 different sites to put this together. In my article on techcommanders.com, I have this article. The link is in the description. So please take a look and dive into it. Now, one of the challenges that seems to come up is, again, when you're a blockchain engineer, this is going to mean anything from being a database architect, a data engineer, a data warehouse analyst, a database administrator. So these are roles that are traditionally not developers, but you're going to need to have Python scripting skills in a lot of cases. Now, also, too, depending on the blockchain that you're working on, like if it's Ethereum, you're going to need Solidity. Now, Solidity is pretty similar and has some similarities to a degree to, for example, JavaScript, okay? So if you are good in that area, great, that might make sense. On the other hand, Hyperledger is focused on Golang, and again, that's another different animal in itself. Now, when it comes to base salaries for blockchain engineers in the US, it's the highest. There's been a lot of remote roles. I've seen salaries up, around 200, but I see them as low as 50 or 60. So it just depends. Now, when it comes to cryptocurrency, now I need to distinguish, again, I hinted at this earlier. Blockchain is not just about Bitcoin, but enterprise. So if you're in the enterprise arena, it's different than if you're integrating Bitcoin payment systems, right? This is a different type of role. Those salaries typically seem to be lower. So it just depends on what area you want to get. So for example, a lot of the roles, if you go over to, I think it's salary.com or Payscale, the link is in the article, but basically those salaries could be about $100K a year. So not exactly like enterprise. So what are the hottest blockchain skills to have right now? The thing to really be aware of is your development experience. This is really true with not only a developer, but an engineer and architect. If you have skills around Java, Python, JavaScript, C++, those are areas that can really help you. GitHub and DevOps is really hot right now. And yes, we do use containers on blockchain. So knowing Docker is a huge deal right now. Now, the blockchains that seem to be the hottest area right now to learn would be Hyperledger, Ripple, Solidity, mainly Ethereum, is really a big deal. Now, if you're getting into cryptocurrencies, it still seems to be Bitcoin. And Ethereum really is more of a token platform than a cryptocurrency, but that sort of is grouped into cryptocurrencies. Now, with Ethereum, we know that this is an open source, public, blockchain-based distributed platform. It is meant to enable what is called smart contract functionality. This is different than Bitcoin. And because of that, it's a different skill set. And it uses pretty much Solidity, which is more of a runtime environment programming language that was really developed for just Ethereum. Now, Ethereum, though, again, is really not meant to track digital currency like Bitcoin. It's really meant to track basically tokens effectively in the background. And it's really meant to be a platform for you to develop upon. Now, those salaries, again, are a little bit lower generally. Now, looking at, for example, Upwork, for example, the contract rates for developers for blockchain could be between, $50 to $80 an hour generally is what it looks like. This is something, again, could vary quite a bit. And another area, too, that seems to come up is around mobile now. So I've seen quite a bit of Android and iOS requirements with the cryptocurrency space as well. With that said, one thing to point out too is that it does seem that the postings are going up from a number perspective. Like 2 years ago when I started tracking this, you might see on LinkedIn maybe 120, 150 posts for blockchain, in the US. And now you'll see 700, 1,500. It varies quite a bit. I think with the current economic situation, it's gone down quite a bit. But with that said, a lot of it is it's just going to be based on your skills. So there's still opportunities out there. The big banks are hiring like crazy around enterprise and cryptocurrency skills. Also, too, it's important to understand that these institutions, for example, have been and still are filing patents for blockchains. And therefore, the expectation for this is to grow quite a bit in the next few years as well. So with that said, getting into blockchains, distributed ledgers, cryptocurrencies should pay off quite a bit for you if you have the right development skills. I do feel that if you are a systems architect or a cloud engineer, that some of your skills are clearly transferable as well. It's just, again, trying to get the right skill sets that are focused on specific blockchains. The reality is in the blockchain world, it's pretty much, a niche area. So you have to have the right skills. There's still a lot of people for companies to choose against. And therefore, I wouldn't say it is a candidate's market. It is a candidate's market if you have the right skills at the right time. That has been certainly demonstrated. With that said, that's all that I had. I hope to see you all again. Good luck on your career searches. Over and out.